Today we are upcycling this cabinet. I actually found it in the dump, in the wood pile. Fantastic condition, solid pine. It's never had any stain or any paint on it. I'm gonna upcycle it and I'm excited to show you guys how it's gonna turn out. The first thing that I'm gonna do is I'm gonna wash this down with some soapy water and then let it dry really well. And then we're going to put on our base coat.
Before we get started, let's take off all of the hardware and all of the hinges.
I'm going to do a really chippy finish, kind of farmhouse kitchen. And when I'm doing my first coat, I always like to use my darkest color. That way when we distress it at the end, the dark color will be on the bottom and it just makes it look more authentic.
And for this project, I'm going to be using the square paintbrush from Zebra. These are my favorite paintbrushes and they have so many to choose from for every different project. I'll put a link down below in the description so you can head to their website and check it out. I'm going to paint the entire cabinet inside and out with my homemade black chalk paint. I certainly have been on a roll finding fantastic pieces in the dump at the wood pile, and I'm happy because I can upcycle them and share them with you.
When I'm painting furniture, I always like to paint the back of the projects also. I usually do it in the same color as the base coat, and I don't do any painting techniques or anything on it, but it just brings it all together nicely. The whole cabinet has one coat of that black homemade chalk paint over the entire piece. I'm going to do a couple different techniques on this. I'm going to do the Vaseline method and I'm going to do the hairspray crackle technique. Both of these techniques will create an aged, authentic, vintage looking finish on your furniture piece that you're doing.
This is such an easy way to create chippy paint, just with some Vaseline. You apply it anywhere where that cabinet would have aged naturally, in the corners, around the legs, and you can put a lot on or a little on, depending on how chippy you want it. And then you just paint right over top of that Vaseline. I'm loving this yellow color. If you've been following along, you see that I practically am painting everything in this yellow color. I love it. When we're doing techniques like this and we want to create that chippy layered effect, you want to have 2 or 3 different colors. I had this turquoise paint that was given to me by a friend. She'd finished up with it. I grabbed it. I am just going to dab it here and there and let the yellow peek through in between and cover the whole cabinet.
I know, just hang in there. I know it looks like an awful mess right now, but it's going to be beautiful when it's finished. So make sure you stick through to the end so you can see the end result. I'm also going to put some graphics on the front door that are going to be beautiful. And the next step is our hairspray technique.
I love using this technique for creating just a fine crackle. This does not give the same kind of crackle as Elmer's glue. This is a little bit smaller, not as pronounced, and I think it just looks more authentic. So I've sprayed my whole piece with firm hairspray, and then I find it also works best if you're using acrylic paint. I didn't have any acrylic paint enough to do this project, so I'm using chalk paint. I'll get a little bit of crackling, but probably not as much as if I had have used acrylic, but we're still gonna get that aged vintage look. We're gonna spray on the hairspray, let it dry, and then paint on top of it, and then take the heat gun and dry it, and the crackles will appear. With all of these painting techniques, I'm trying to replicate what an old piece of furniture looks like after it's been aged over 100 years, or that old sign and that crackled and layered paint look. And with all these techniques, a lot of them, I think I can get pretty close to making them look really authentic. Everything has been sprayed with hairspray and then painted and then completely dried. And then I just took a scraper and scraped all around the edges where that Vaseline was, and it just took it down to those other layers of color. Now, this is a little trick too, if you want to make it even look more authentic. I like using a stencil brush, dipping it in some water, and then scrubbing into that paint, and it'll take it down to the next layer, and you can do it as big or as small of an area as you want, and it'll expose that paint underneath. And just look at how fantastic that looks, and it looks natural. Cabinet's completely painted. I love the way that it turned out. Now we're going to put some graphics on the front door. I've got 2 graphics that I designed and I'm going to put them together so I can have the graphic down the whole door panel. I've put them in my Word program, I've sized them and made sure they fit on the door, and I'm using my Mod Podge reverse graphic transfer method. I have all kinds of full tutorials on my channel on how to do this step by step if you've never tried it before, but it's so versatile and it works fantastic. We're just applying the Mod Podge on each of the graphics, putting them down, making sure we've gotten all the bubbles and all the wrinkles out, and then we're going to set it aside and let it dry overnight. These graphics are available in my Etsy store. I'll put the link down below in the description so you can check it out. There's these graphics plus so many more. I've let these graphics sit overnight, and now I've just got a little dish of water with a little rag, and I'm just dampening that paper until you can just start to see the graphic show through, and then rubbing off the paper. This technique takes a little bit of practice, but once you get the hang of it, it's so much fun. Let's put some hardware on the door. It didn't have a handle, so I found this pole in my stash, and I'm going to give it a little bit of a patina. The turquoise paint that I used on the cabinet, I'm going to paint on the hardware and then wipe it off with a rag. You can also wipe it off with a baby wipe, and it'll just stay on all of the little nooks and crannies, and it'll give that patina look to the hardware. And once it's completely dry, I'm going to seal it all up with my engine enamel, and it'll make it really durable. And the cabinet is completely done, and I am in love with it. I think I was able to really replicate that chippy, layered, antique looking wood, and the graphics on the front turned out fabulous. Adding a little bit of a patina look to the hardware just took it to the next level. It's quite a transformation from that plain pine cabinet, had no character, to what I've created. I'm ready to tackle this gorgeous rocking chair. I couldn't believe when I found it, and it's actually in really good shape. The wood's kind of dried out and the caning is a little bit brittle, but I'm pretty sure I can save it. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take it and wash it all down with some TSP, get it nice and clean, and then take a sanding block to it, a 220 grit, just to knock off any high edges or any little bit of stain or paint that may be left on it. I wasn't sure what products to use on it, so I took a picture of this chair and then I went to our local Home Depot. I have a fantastic painting section there and they're really helpful. And they pointed me in the right direction of what products to use. I'm going to put on some linseed oil. That will just moisturize it and help it not be so brittle and stand up better. And for the wood, I'm going to be using some penetrating oil wood finish. And I just got a clear finish. I didn't want to stain it another color. I wanted to keep it this color. So I'm really excited to get at this and see how it turns out and talk about a fantastic dump find for free. I was so excited. I got it all prepped and it's ready for the finishing oil. I used a 220 grit sandpaper over the whole thing. It worked really well. There's a few spots that it didn't come up and it left a little bit of a dark spot, but that's okay because it'll just give it character. And then we're going to put the penetrating oil on next, and then I'm going to, when that's all dry, put the linseed oil on the caning, and I'm gonna have a beautiful rocking chair. So let's get to work. Nothing better than getting a free end table that I know I can upcycle and make it pretty again. It's in pretty rough shape. The finish is peeling off and it just needs a really good cleaning. The first thing that I'm doing is I'm taking my heat gun and I'm heating up that top coat of probably like a varnish or a stain, and it's actually coming off really easy. Just heating it up and taking my scraper and scraping it away, and it's taking it down to the wood, the bare wood, and it's actually really pretty. I just have my heat gun on the highest setting, but I'm making sure that I'm not holding it too close to the wood because we don't want to scorch it, and just scraping it away until I can get the top completely free of any of this varnish or stain that's on it. Once I got that all cleaned off, I took my 120 grit sandpaper and I sanded the top, and the top is just gorgeous. I love the wood. And the sides had a little bit of that peeling, same material, so I am just taking the sandpaper over the sides and the fronts of the drawers also. I'm just going to use the same hardware that was on it, but I can freshen it up. A little tip when you're spray painting these knobs, cut a little hole in a cardboard box, stick it through, and you can paint it a lot easier. I'm just coating it with a little bit of black spray paint. When that dries, I'm going to put on a coat of my engine enamel. This will just seal it up really well and make it durable, and the paint will never chip on it. I've decided for the drawers and the side and the front of this little end table, I'm going to paint with my black homemade chalk paint. I'm upcycling this little end table for my son because he's just bought a house and he needs to have a little end table up in his bedroom. So we have to make it so it's going to fit in with his very neutral decor. So we're just going to paint the drawers and the sides with 3 coats of that black homemade chalk paint. And if you've never used this Worcester paintbrush, it is fantastic. I'll put a link down below in the description because if you don't have one of these paintbrushes in your crafting stash, you need to get one. I've got the bottom all painted. Now I'm going to keep the top the wood look. I've got this penetrating oil finish, and when you apply that on the bare wood, it just brings out the grain and it just looks absolutely high-end gorgeous. I'm going to seal that whole top with that penetrating oil. Now, once everything is completely dry on the base and the drawers, I'm going to seal it up with some matte finish polyacrylic sealer. And this was a really easy upcycle. I've taken this old, ugly looking end table that was really dated looking, and I've updated it so it looks modern and sleek, and I love the black with the wood top. And the best part was it was on the side of the road. Always see these end tables at the thrift store, so make sure you look for one the next time you're out and about. Next project is also a roadside find, this old chair. The bones of the chair are really good actually, but the seat cushion is beyond repair. I can't fix that one up. So we're going to take the seat off, we're going to update it, and we're going to paint this chair into an updated version that looks much better than it did on the side of the road. The seat was really easy to move. It was just attached with 4 screws in the bottom. So I'm just loosening those up and taking the chair pad off. As you can see, it was beautiful at one time, but it's torn and it's really dirty. And I'm just going to remove that whole piece of tapestry. And I should be able to just peel it off and use my hammer. It's put on with some little nails. Now, what I like to do, I always save these. You can always use them in another project. So I've got a little glass dish here, and I'm putting all those little nails in so I can save them and tuck them away for another DIY. Now, the actual wood of the seat is in really good shape. It's not cracked or it's not stained, so we're going to be able to upcycle this really easy. I'm just kind of sanding down any little bits of the leftover padding and just making sure that it's nice and clean and smooth. And I'm also going to take a 120 grit sandpaper and a little piece of hand sanding paper and go over that complete chair. Now, I always am drawn lately to this yellow color. You've seen me use it before, and I just love it. And I'm also going to use this Worcester paintbrush again. Again, this paintbrush is fantastic. It gets into corners and small edges, and it's even really good if you're painting a full wall in a room for edging in. So we're going to put a couple coats of this yellow on this chair, and this yellow color is called Glazed Pear by Bear, and I got it in an eggshell finish. Now this is a fun way to distress paint that looks like it's naturally aged. I just use my stencil paintbrush and I dip it in water and then I just rub away at the paint, and it's just gonna naturally wear that paint away, and it's not gonna look like it's been just sanded down. It's going to look like it's been worn away over the years. And it takes a little bit of time, but it's definitely worth the process to take this brush and you just rub with the water into that paint until you're liking the way that it looks. And you're going to do this in any area on the chair where it would have naturally aged. So that's an easy way to create a chippy, old looking paint finish, which is some water and an old paintbrush. So now we're gonna fix up this seat. I found this chair cushion at the thrift store. It was like $1, and I picked up this rug at Dollarama. I just love that it's got that yellow color already in it, and we're going to just put this on top of that chair pad. Now later on, this is really easy to remove if your style changes, and you can just take the staples out. But we're going to put that chair pad down underneath, put the rug on top of it, and then just size it to fit just a little bit bigger than that wooden chair pad. So I ran into a little bit of an issue when I started to cut that rug because I didn't think one step ahead. It started to unravel on me because it's not a sew-and edge once I cut it. So I'm starting to staple it on, and as I was doing that, it was unraveling a little bit. So what I did was I got my fabric glue out and I just ran a bead across the top of it, and that's just going to make sure that it's not going to unravel anymore. I just put a line across the top of wherever I cut it and just took my finger and kind of blended it right in there, and it's not going to move now and it's not going to unravel on me. Folding up the corners so it looks nice and neat with my electric staple gun. This thing is fantastic. I'll put a link down below for a staple gun if you don't have one in your craft room, because it made this job really easy. So I've taken this drab looking chair, the seat cushion that was ruined, and I've upcycled it into this beautiful boho style chair for free from a chair that I found on the side of the road. And the bonus part was already having that paint color and then finding the mat from the dollar store that matched it completely.
This right here is why you put word out to your friends and your family that you are an upcycler, because this cabinet was given to me by a friend who was cleaning out his parents' home and didn't have a spot for it in his own, and knew I was an upcycler and I could probably do something with it. So I grabbed it from him, of course, and I've put it here in our home. Now I do find that it just kind of blends in. It just is too much wood on wood on wood. So I think what I'm going to do, because it fits absolutely perfect in this spot, I think I'm going to give it a little bit of an upcycle and maybe use some black chalk paint. So, got lots of work. Let's get going on this free cabinet.
If you're new here, my name is Deidre from our Upcycled Life, and I love showing you how you can transform and upcycle projects into beautiful home decor on a budget. Today I'm going to be sharing lots of great ideas and tutorials on how to turn everyday items into stunning pieces for your home. I love repurposing old furniture, especially when you can find it free or really affordable. You're going to be amazed what you can do with a little bit of creativity and some inexpensive materials. Make sure you watch through to the end for a variety of different projects that will fit any budget. And if you like this kind of content, make sure you subscribe.
I got all the hardware off. I am not replacing it because I love it. It's like a hammered metal, but I am gonna spray paint them all matte black. I love the way the handles turned out. You can really see that hammered texture. I'm really glad that I'm saving the hardware and just spray painting it. And I'm gonna screw them all back on the door fronts. I am just going to paint this portion of the cabinet. Number one reason, I hate painting shutters, but I just think it'll be nice to have the two different tones. We'll have the black, and then I'll keep the doors this color because it actually matches the trim really well. So I'm going to empty this out and get it ready to paint.
Okay, we're all ready. I'm using chalk paint. I have a homemade chalk paint that I absolutely love. It's affordable, and it'll adhere to any surface, so you don't have to do a whole lot of prep to any of your pieces that you're painting. So I've mixed up some black homemade chalk paint. I'll put the link down below in the description, so if you want to make that recipe, you can for yourself. And also, I picked this sweater up the other day, $4.99, American Eagle at Value Village. What do you think?
First coat's dry, so I'm now putting on the second coat. That's one of the nice things about chalk paint is it dries really quickly, so you can complete a project in a day and have 2 or 3 coats of that chalk paint dry for you.
Okay, I got everything all painted and I absolutely love it. It took 2 coats of the chalk paint. It's dry. Now I'm going to put the doors on.
I am absolutely in love with this cabinet, and what makes it even more fabulous is that it was free and it only took me a couple hours and a little bit of black chalk paint, and it looks fabulous. And I've just put some of my thrifted finds on top, a faux plant, a little pottery dish. I love looking for pottery at the thrift store, handmade. Nice little glass container, a little collection of some pottery and some battery operated candles that I think are fantastic to add some ambiance. Added a few vintage books, and I've had these spindles in my collection for forever. I think they look nice just nestled in there. And did you know you can put art on your TV? If you go onto YouTube and search vintage art TV, they have so many fantastic channels. You can pick whatever vibe you want. Right now, winter, this would look beautiful. And it's gonna come up with a beautiful winter scene on your TV, and it's gonna alternate pictures every 10 or 15 minutes. They've got some beautiful floral ones. It's something just to play around with and see what looks nice in your setting. Next upcycle is this wicker stand, and I've had this for a long time, probably almost 2 years.
I keep looking at it and not quite sure what to do with it. And I think I've been inspired. I've just kind of had this piece of wood on the top and this plant on it, but because the top is broken. So let's do this upcycle. Let's fix this up. This is what it looks like on the inside. I just had this piece of wood here because the wicker is broken and the inside and the top is broken on it. And it's covered in this quilted material, but it's stained, it's ripped, it's in really bad shape. You can just imagine how beautiful this was when it was brand new. And it's all the glue has come loose. It really needs some TLC. And then the bottom, I've just stuck a basket in here, but it's been tucked away in my shed. It's really dusty, but somebody had just kind of decoupaged or stuck down this piece of paper, and it actually has a little drawer in it. And the drawer is also lined. It's got this pink tape on it. So it really needs to have some TLC. So let's get to work. Obviously somebody maybe used this as an old sewing kit. There's a few little old buttons in the bottom. I'm trying to scrape out all the bits and pieces out of the top and the bottom here. So I squirted them with some hot soapy water. I'm gonna let them soak and then I'm gonna scrape at it and see if I can get it down to the bare wood. Now with the top, this is all coming apart. So I think I'm gonna cut this inside piece out and then I'll be left with the border, and then I think I can put it back on the top. I got the inside of that wicker all cleaned out. It was really broken and really fragile, but I was able to save it, and I think I'll be able to keep it on the top. Ultimately, I would love this to turn into a beautiful planter. I still got to clean out all the gunk and glue that's in here and on the bottom. I've got it cleaned up pretty good. I have no idea what kind of glue it was, but it was sticky. I love that natural wood on the bottom. The top is still got a lot of glue. I'm not sure if I'm gonna get much more out. And the drawer the same. It's got some really sticky glue. I'm gonna let it dry completely now and then go back at it tomorrow when it's dry, and I might take the sander to the wood a little bit and see if I can get more of that glue out. Now there's a handle on this side, but it's missing on this side. You can see that it's pretty rough. I don't want to touch it too much because it's fragile, but I'm going to cut this one off, and I think I might incorporate it into the front. It's really easy to take off. It's just a little piece of wicker. Came off really easy, and I think it would look really nice if I maybe put it on the drawer or put it on the front here, and I'll just use my hot glue gun and put it on. It also needs a really good cleaning, so I've just got a soapy rag and I'm just carefully just wiping off any dust or any dirt that it may have. Everything is dry. Now I cannot get a lot of this paint out of the top, but I don't think it's going to be an issue because if I'm turning this into a planter, it almost might make like a waterproof barrier. But the bottom piece of wood came up really nice. I'm not going to touch it. The wicker is really fragile. I have to be really careful because if I even bump into it, it's cracking and it's breaking off, as you can see right here. I lost a piece right here. So the next step that I'm going to do is I'm going to seal it all up. I'm going to take this out into a well-ventilated area and give it a spray of my clear gloss over the entire piece. I know I had said that I was probably gonna just glue this little handle on here, but I found a little piece of copper wire. I think it blends in pretty good, and I'm just gonna use that and just attach it on the back. This turned out absolutely beautiful, and I'm mad at myself that I left it for as long as I did without upcycling it. It is fragile. It wouldn't stand up to any high use, but just to have it for a nice little plant stand, it's gonna work perfect.
I wanted to show you sometimes when you find things at the thrift store, you don't actually need to upcycle it. You can just repurpose it. Now, I found this beautiful rocking chair. It's a little tiny one. Looks like somebody might have had a little puppy that was a little bit aggressive on some of the corners. Hopefully not a child, but probably a little puppy. And I'm just going to turn it into a plant stand. I paid $4.99 for it. And it's so beautiful, and just to put a potted plant on top of it, I think it's gonna be perfect. And I found the perfect spot for it, right beside our fireplace, snuggled in between Tina's little bed. Great way to repurpose a vintage rocking chair.
Next upcycle is this wicker basket. It was $13.99 and I had a coupon for 20% off at Value Village. So great deal for a really big wicker basket. It's kind of dinged up along the bottom and I'm not really loving the dark wood on the bottom. So I'm going to sand it up a little bit, clean it, and I'm going to put some white chalk paint along the base of this basket.
I don't think this needs a lot. It's in really good shape. Other than the bottom has quite a few little dings and chips out of it, I'm going to paint it with my homemade white chalk paint, and I think that's all it needs. It's going to be a great catch-all for pillows and blankets. Okay, we got 2 coats on, and I think I'm just going to take my sanding block and just kind of roughen up around the edges. I think it'll blend in with this material better, but I thought this was a really great deal for $14.99, and I've got lots of extra pillows and blankets that I can tuck away in this little basket, and it's going to look beautiful. Today's project is this bench. I picked it up at a yard sale about a month ago. I think I paid around $5 for it, and I'm gonna finish it off today. I'm not really sure about the different types of wood, but it's really heavy, and I'm kind of thinking that it might be oak. The grain in it is fabulous, so the technique that I'm gonna do on it is a wood burning technique, so I can make all that grain pop out, and it looks fabulous when it's all finished, and I'm excited to show you guys how to do it. The one thing that you're going to need is you're going to need a butane or a propane torch. We're going to kind of char the top of the wood. That's to start the project. And this is an outside project. This is not something that you're going to do in the house. So I'm going to take it out of my shed, outside in the fresh air, and I'm going to show you how to do it. Okay, let's get started.
I'm so glad I found this bench when I was out yard sailing. It's really good quality, heavy, handmade, been put together really well, and I'm excited to try this technique on it. I've got my bench set up on a metal stand. I've got my garden hose ready if I need it, if it flares up any, and I'm going to just turn on my propane torch, and you're just going to want to take it back and forth across the wood. Try not to leave it in any one spot for too long because you'll burn it and it'll scorch it. So you kind of want to just go evenly back and forth. It takes a little bit of practice. I'm still not really good at it. I made some scorches and I made a few little burn marks, but I think in the end it just kind of gives it some really nice character. Okay, I have this all done, and I've burnt all the top and the bottom and the sides, and I love the way that it makes the grain and the wood pop out. I'm not an expert at this. I've only tried this technique a few times, and you can see I've kind of scorched it here and there, but I think it just adds character to it. The main thing is just to use caution. Make sure you do it outside. Make sure you have a hose, and I even had a water bottle handy too if I needed to squirt if it flared up a little bit. Had my glasses on and I wore a mask. So just take your time, just be careful, and I'm excited now to finish this off and put a stain on it and show you how it pops the grain out. Okay, I've got my sander out, and I've got a 80 grit sandpaper on it, and I'm just going to sand all of the edges and all of the top and the sides just to get off any rough bits and just to distress it a little bit more.
Okay, so I have it all sanded down. I couldn't decide what color stain I wanted to use. So I think I'm gonna do something kind of fun and maybe do all 4 of these colors. I have a red latex paint, I have a green acrylic, I have a blue latex and a yellow acrylic. And I think I'm gonna make these into my DIY stain. It's a super simple recipe. It's 1-to-1, 1 part water to 1 part paint. And I'm going to just kind of maybe put some blue on the top, some red down here, yellow, green. I don't know. I'm just going to fool around and just see. Now, you can just leave it as is. It's beautiful just the way it is, and put a polyacrylic sealer on top of it. But I kind of want to make something kind of funky and fun today. So bear with me and let's see what I create. I've just mixed up my DIY stain. 1 part water, 1 part paint, and I'm going to put the blue on the top, and you're just going to rub it in where you want it. Let it soak into all that wood.
I'm just using a little rag just to put this stain on, and it's really porous, so it uses it up and soaks it up pretty good in the wood. So just put a liberal amount over the whole piece, and then when you're finished, you're going to take a paper towel and wipe off any excess stain that you have. And you can mix up any paint and turn it into a stain. You can use acrylic, you can use latex, you can use chalk paint. You just have to do the ratio of 1-to-1 and thin it down and just wipe it onto your project. And it has the same qualities and the same kind of look as it would as you bought a colored stain. So basically what is happening is the lighter wood is picking up the stain, and then the darker burnt wood is not picking up the stain as dark. So that's going to give you those 2 tones of color on the project. And doesn't this look fantastic already? I'm excited to try all these different colors on the different parts of this bench. I just hope it looks okay. There's no turning back now. So cross your fingers, and I'm excited to see the outcome. I'm just going to work away, finishing up the different colors, and then we'll be ready to seal it.
Okay, I finished staining it, and then I took it back outside and I gave it another really good sanding. I wanted to roughen up the edges a little bit and expose some of that raw wood before I sealed it up. I'm going to seal it up with a polyurethane. This is a water-based product from Minwax. I wanted a really glossy finish, so this is the clear gloss, and it cleans up with water. You want to make sure that for easy cleanup that you buy the water-based one and not the oil-based one. So I'm going to get working on that, and then I'll show you the end result.
And it's all finished and I love it. And I'm so glad that I went with those different pops of color. I kind of went out of my comfort zone, and I'm glad I did, because I didn't want to create something that was just plain chalk paint and sanded. I wanted to do something a little bit more funky and fun. So if you can get a hold of a propane or a butane torch and you have someplace outside that you can do a project like this, give it a try. It just takes a little bit of practice and you can create some beautiful home decor. This is a project that I'm going to upcycle and do a fabric decoupage on the top of it. I actually found this on the side of the road and it's structurally really good. The colors are really funky, but we're going to make it pretty again. And for this project, I'm going to be using the Chiseled Wedge by Zebra. I love their paintbrushes, and this one's perfect for this project. I'm going to paint this whole end table with 2 coats of pink chalk paint that I had left over from another project. And then when it's completely dry, I'm going to sand it down with this 220 sandpaper. And then take a damp rag and just wipe it all off. Make sure that there's no residue left on the top. The fabric that we're going to decoupage is this scarf that I found at the thrift store for $5.99. It was in the 75% off bin, and I love the pattern. The pink on the end table matched perfect with the scarf. When you are going to decoupage on top of a surface, you want to make sure you're painting underneath a lighter color. If not, it will show through on your piece of fabric and it will not look as nice. So having that light pink underneath will look really nice when we decoupage the scarf on top. Now we're going to be using a polyacrylic sealer to decoupage. You can use Mod Podge, you can use homemade Mod Podge, but I find using the polyacrylic, it's thinner and it just lays better into the material, trying to get a nice smooth surface. You also want to make sure when you're picking a fabric, you're not picking something that's really thick. A nice thin cotton, or like the scarf, or something that will be able to soak up that polyacrylic really well will work perfect when you're trying to fabric decoupage. You want to make sure you're putting on a liberal amount of the polyacrylic sealer. When you lay that fabric into that, you want it to soak right through into the top. Now I've put a pair of gloves on, so when we get this exactly where we want it, now I've cut this piece of fabric just a little bit bigger than the top of the surface. You don't want to cut it right to size. You want the fabric to lay over the edge a little bit, and then I'm just going to smooth it out and make sure there's no bubbles and wrinkles right out to the edge. You'll know you've put enough polyacrylic sealer on if it's soaked right through the material. You want to make sure you have spread enough on the base coat that it's going to be able to come right up through the fabric. So that's what I mean by picking a fabric that's going to be absorbent and be able to take on all that polyacrylic sealer. If you're using something too thick, it will not be able to soak through. We've got all the bubbles and wrinkles out of that piece of material, and now before it dries, we're going to put a coat of the polyacrylic right on top of that fabric, making sure that we're spreading that polyacrylic right out to the edge. You want to make sure you have the polyacrylic right to the edge, even over a little bit, so it makes it easier when we're ready to take away that extra fabric. You can see how nice this water-based polyacrylic sealer spreads. I find with the Mod Podge, it's just a bit too thick to get it to spread really nice, where this will give you a nice, smooth, even coat. And next time you're at the thrift store, make sure you go over to the scrap fabric section or the bed sheet section, and you'll see all of the wonderful fabric that you can choose from to do this technique with. And what I like to do is when I find a piece of fabric, I'll take the fabric to the paint store, to Home Depot or to Lowe's, and I'll match a paint color that I love out of the fabric and just buy a little tester size, or depending on how big your project is, and match it all together. I was lucky this pink that I had left over matched this fabric perfect. We've got the first coat completely covering the whole top and then spread out to the edges a little bit. I put it outside in the sun and I let it dry completely. And now that it's dry, I'm going back with that 220 grit sandpaper and I'm just lightly sanding the top. And you'll see as you're sanding it, it's going to go really smooth. You'll see if there was any little rough kind of bubbles in it, this will take it right down smooth. I've got it all sanded down and then I wiped off any little dust or debris, and now I'm putting on a second coat, and again making sure that I'm spreading it right out to the edges. Now I think this end table needs some legs. I had these table legs in my stash, but I don't like the varnish that's on them, so I'm going to sand them right down and then attach them to the little end table. This is them all sanded down. I put some polyacrylic sealer on them. They're going to look great. I repeated this process 3 times, letting it completely dry in between each coat, and now we're ready to cut off the extra material. I'm going to cut a slit into each corner, and then we're going to get a really sharp X-Acto knife. Make sure you have a new blade so we can cut through this fabric really easy. Now this is why it was so important to take that polyacrylic right out to the edge, because it's crisp and it's dry now, and when you run the knife along the edge of it, it'll cut it nice and clean and straight. Hold that knife right straight up and down along the edge of that table and just slowly cut along, and I love this. It looks so fantastic. It's nice and neat and tidy and crisp. And again, you can see why you want to pick a fabric that's not too thick so you can get a nice clean edge when you're all finished. Now that we have all the material cut off, I'm going to take that 220 grit sandpaper again and give it one last sanding right out to the edge. If you have any little hairs of fabric that are left from cutting, this sandpaper will sand that all away, and we're going to then wipe it with a damp rag again and put on one last coat of the polyacrylic sealer, making sure that we're going right out to the edge. And that's how easy it is to decoupage fabric onto your furniture. Once the top was completely dry, I went back and I distressed the whole cabinet. I wanted a little bit of that orange to peek through because there was some orange in that fabric, and I think it was a perfect idea because it all kind of made it look like it was meant to be together. And how cute is this? A little tropical kind of boho feel end table that I created from a ugly looking table that I found on the side of the road. If you haven't tried this technique before, grab some fabric when you're out at the thrift store, and if you've got a little project you can try it on, give this a go with the polyacrylic sealer. It's a beautiful day here. The sun is shining, spring has come, and this is the first project on my to-do list. I saved this bench from the dump, and I'm excited to upcycle it. First of all, I love this paint color, and the chippiness and the way it has worn is fabulous. I don't want to change any of that. I want to keep all the paint that's there intact. I just want to freshen it up. It's not in perfect shape. It's really old, but the ornate legs on it and the sides of the bench are just fabulous. It needs a good cleaning, so I'm going to use some TSP and scrub it down and get all the little bits of dirt and loose paint off. This TSP is great. It'll remove any grease or grime or dirt. And I'm just going to use my scraper and just remove any loose bits of paint. It always amazes me what people just throw out because this bench had so much potential. Let me know in the comments if you would have saved this from the landfill. Now I'm just going to use this scuff pad instead of sandpaper because I don't want to take any of the paint off. I just want to remove any loose bits that are still there, and this works really well because it's a very fine grit. I have it all cleaned and prepped and sanded down, and I'm going to put on my homemade stain to bring out some of the wood grain. I want to leave as much as the original paint as I could, so the stain will make everything all pop, and that's what I'm going to do next. I'll put a link down below in the description and a link up top here of how you can make your own DIY stain. You can make it into any color, and it's so cheap and affordable and easy. And I'm just going to apply the stain over the whole bench, even over the existing paint, and then it's just going to freshen up that wood and bring out the grain and make it pop more. And the nice thing about this stain is you can layer it. You can put one layer on if you think that it's not maybe quite dark enough. You can mix up a little bit more and put more on until you get the desired color that you like. And I think it looks really great. It's really freshened up this wood and it doesn't look so dried out and aged. After you've applied all the stain, you just take a rag and wipe off anywhere where it's still wet. And I thought this would look really cute with a nice quote on the front. I'm going to do my Mod Podge reversed graphic transfer technique to put these words on the front of the bench. I have a full tutorial with step-by-step instructions on how to do this technique. I'll put a link down below in the description and up here in the corner. Okay, this is dried completely, and I'm just going to take a damp rag and rub off that paper, and you're going to have the words left on the bench. I love using this technique. It's a great way to update furniture or your upcycled projects or to make wooden signs. And I'm enjoying being out in the sun and enjoying the warm weather and being able to get outside and do some upcycled projects that I've had stored away for the winter in my shed. Okay, and the graphics are all done, and I love the way they look on the front of this bench. If you're interested in purchasing these graphics, they're in my Etsy store. I'll put a link down below and up above. We're ready to put on the top coat. I'm putting on a Varathane outdoor polyacrylic sealer. This is going to go on my deck, and it's going to be outside in the elements, so I want to make sure that it's sealed really well. So I'll probably put 2 or 3 coats on it and it'll be good to go. And there it is, all finished, and I'm so glad I was able to save it from the landfill. Once I put that top coat of the Varathane on it, it just made that yellow pop, and it looks fantastic. Let me know down in the comments what you think about this upcycled bench. I'm loving it.
Today we're working on a dump find. I found this little table in the wood pile at the landfill. It's in kind of rough shape, but I know I can save it. It's just one of those cheap little tables, and it all comes apart. And I'm gonna do some of my one-step paint and some gift wrap paper decoupage on it. Kind of gonna do a funky spin on it, so I'm excited to show you guys what I have in mind. So we got lots of work. Let's get started.
This table has definitely seen better days. A lot of the finish has come off and it's loose. It needs to be tightened up once it's finished, but I know I can make it into something a lot better. This is a type of side table that all the legs and the spindles unscrew, so it actually makes it easier for painting. I can take it all apart and then lay it all out and paint it properly. When you see these tables out and about, don't overlook them. They're really easy to make pretty again. I took my 220 standing block and I sanded it all down to get it all nice and smooth, and then I had some holes all around the outside of it. I think it had a ledge on it at one point. Filled it up with some wood filler, let it dry, and then I sanded that down and then took a baby wipe and wiped everything down clean so we have a nice surface to start on. This is the gift wrap paper that I'm going to use. I picked it up at the dollar store and I had this paint in my stash. I'm going to turn it into one-step paint, but look how it matches that gift wrap. It's going to come together perfectly. I've mixed up my one-step paint. If you missed that video, I'll put the link down in the description where you can watch that and get the recipe from there. It basically eliminates any prep to your surface or any top coat. It's all in one. It works fantastic, and wow, is it ever durable. If you want to paint a piece of furniture or cabinet doors, this is a recipe to use because it is really hard to distress afterwards. It's so hard. So if you're just going to do a solid color, this works perfect. Now I'm going to get painting these spindles. I have a little trick for painting spindles and it really speeds up the process. Also have a full tutorial there. I'll put that link down below in the description if you want to see some really fun spindles that I painted in some fabulous colors. You can check that out after. Basically, you're just putting on a rubber glove and then one of those spare socks that you've had laying around for forever, bring them out into your crafting area and use them to paint spindles. Dip your hand in the paint with the sock and just rub it on the spindles. These are probably going to take a couple coats. I'm going to let them dry completely in between before I add the next coat. And they're coming along perfect. I think they're still going to need one more coat. And I've got 2 coats on these 2 shelves. They look great, but they're going to need one more coat also. I've got 2 full coats on these spindles. It's covered really well, but I think I want to do one more coat and I'm going to sponge it on. I just have a little piece of sponge and I'm just dipping it in the paint and I'm just going to dab it up and down along that whole spindle, and it's going to give it a nice smooth finish. And I'm also going to use that same process on those 2 shelves. This has got 2 coats on it already. I'd let it completely dry. And now I'm going to put my 3rd coat on with a sponge. It's going to get rid of any brush lines or any imperfections that you've had when you were painting it if you just dab that sponge up and down. My spindles are drying. I love this red. It is so fun and so whimsical, and it's always nice every once in a while to kind of venture out of that white and black and do something with a splash of color. Now we're going to get the gift wrap and we're going to cut a piece of it off the roll a little bit bigger than the top. We're going to Mod Podge it on with my matte finish and you're just going to brush it on. You don't want it too thick. If you have it thick, it's going to wrinkle up too much and bubble too much. You just want a thin coat, just enough to stick that wrapping paper onto the surface. One thing with decoupaging that you should always kind of keep in the back of your mind is you're never going to have a project that's 100% no wrinkles or no bubbles. It's virtually impossible. And I usually, when I'm doing projects like this, I embrace the wrinkles. I love it when they show up every once in a while because you can make it look distressed and old and it doesn't look like it's just a hunk of paper stuck on the top of your surface. Now I have added 2 coats of Mod Podge on top of that piece of wood. Let both of those coats dry completely. Now I'm going to take that gift wrap and place it exactly where I want on that piece of wood. The flowers, I kind of want to make sure they're centered up and are going to look nice when it's finished. And I'm putting a piece of parchment paper on top. Make sure it's parchment paper, not wax paper. Then we're going to iron it on. I have my iron set on the highest setting with no steam, and you're just going to take your time and just slowly just iron on that gift wrap. And as you're doing that, Mod Podge underneath will melt and adhere the paper to your project. I really love using the iron-on method to decoupage. It works really well when you're using it on a bigger project too. And the nice thing about using gift wrap paper is it comes in a bigger roll, so you can decoupage a bigger project. You're not limited to just using a piece of paper. That ironed on really well. Now I'm going to take my sanding block. This is a 80 grit sanding block, and I'm just going to take it around the edges and just sand it. And as you do that, you're going to leave a really nice clean edge around your piece of wood. Now I'm going to take that sanding block across the top of that gift wrap paper. I just want to age it, kind of distress it so it doesn't look perfect. And as you can see, it did kind of wrinkle up quite a bit. I don't know if it was a different type of gift wrap paper, but I actually really like it. And as I'm sanding it, I'm liking it even more. It gives it a really distressed look. By sanding it, it knocks off that top edge of the wrinkles and leaves this beautiful distressed finish. I'm embracing the wrinkles on this one because I love the way that it turned out. I'm going to seal this up with engine enamel. This table will probably be used for a plant stand or a little end table, and I want it to be sealed really well and really be durable. This engine enamel is perfect for that. We are ready to put this dump fine table back together. And I'm going to put a couple coats of paint on the bottoms of those shelves. Someone else's trash is my treasure. I knew with a little bit of TLC and a little bit of patience, I could turn this into something beautiful again. And I love the bright color and the whimsical feel of it.
Today we are painting fabric. I picked up this table and chairs from a friend of mine. She was selling it for $75. It's absolutely gorgeous. I'm not doing anything to the wood or the chairs, but the chair pads are in rough shape. There's some staining, some pills, and I'm going to show you how you can paint the fabric without having to reupholster. Okay, we've got lots of work. Let's get started. Painting fabric with fabric paint is a fun and affordable way to transform the look of a room. Whether it's chair pads, cushions, or other fabric items, fabric paint offers an endless possibility to create custom decor. Yesterday, I washed all of these chair pads with some hot soapy water and let them dry overnight because I knew I was going to be doing this video. So make sure you're using some clean fabric before you paint your fabric. This still has some stains on it that didn't come up even after I washed it. So this is a perfect project to do this technique on because it's going to cover up all of those stains. Let's get painting some fabric. This is so easy to do and it turns out fabulous. I have a tester of latex paint. I found it at Home Depot. It was in the Oops section, and I'm hoping it's going to paint up like a leather look. A squirt bottle with some water, some fabric softener. You can use any type of fabric softener. I have a little measuring cup and a little dish to mix everything together, a paint stick, and a paintbrush. I'm going to be combining the fabric softener and the latex paint in equal amounts that are enough for my project. And you can do the same for yours. Just remember to only mix what you need for your project, as this mixture does not store very well. After pouring equal amounts of fabric softener and latex paint into a small dish, I'm going to use a stir stick to thoroughly mix those together. It may take some time and the mixture will start to thicken up. It's exactly what we want. It's going to develop like a fluffy texture as the fabric softener and the paint blend together.
Now that the fabric softener and the latex paint are thoroughly mixed together, I noticed there was a few imperfections and pulls and snags in the fabric. I'm just going to carefully use my scissors and trim away any of those little snags, being cautious not to cut any of the fabric itself. It's important to note that this technique works best on a smooth fabric. If your fabric has a lot of texture or a lot of design, it may be more challenging to paint it evenly. So when attempting this method, make sure you're looking for fabrics that are going to have a smooth surface. To make sure that you're going to have a successful fabric painting, it's important to have a slightly damp fabric before you paint it. You don't want it to be soaking wet. You don't want it to go into that pad underneath, but just the fabric is damp enough for the paint to absorb into the fibers. I'm using a spray bottle filled with some water to mist the entire chair pad, being careful, not to make it too wet, just light enough to soak into all of those fibers. I'm now going to start applying that mixture of latex paint and fabric softener onto that fabric, using long sweeping strokes to make sure I cover the entire chair, ensuring that the paint is evenly distributed. One of the benefits of using this technique is that the result finish is smooth and soft to the touch. Unlike I find when I use chalk paint, which can sometimes kind of feel crispy, the fabric softener method is soft and plush and it's comfortable to sit on. It doesn't leave any of that crunchy or stiff residue, making it my favorite option for a comfortable way to paint fabric. Painting fabric with fabric softener and latex paint is an easy and affordable way to update any of your fabric items. It creates a soft and plush finish with a nice texture, and it's perfect for upholstery, cushions. The process is simple and the results are really durable, and I find when it dries, it's not transferring to any clothes or if anyone is sitting on it or rubbing against it. Your fabric is getting dry while you're painting, you can re-wet that fabric by spraying it with a squirt bottle and then painting, and that's going to help it go on nice and smooth. Okay, so here's where I'm at. This is fantastic. It's soft, it's perfect. The color, barf. I don't like it at all. I don't know what I was thinking. Well, I do know what I was thinking. It was cheap. It was in the whoop section. I thought, oh, it kind of looks like leather. I could use this. I paid $1 for it. Not gonna work. So we're gonna do a 360 and we're gonna change the color. I don't like this at all. And I wanted to show you guys that sometimes not everything that I do in DIYs is not perfect, because this is yucky. I don't like that color, and I knew as soon as I did the first cushion, not gonna work. So we're gonna go to plan B. Stay tuned. Now we're switching gears, and I'm gonna go for the blue color in this rug instead of that rust color. That was awful. I'm mixing up again that half fabric softener and half latex paint and incorporating it all together really well. We can paint right on top of that previous mistake color. It's gonna kind of act as a primer anyways, and it's gonna give us a base coat. Once it's all mixed together, we're ready to paint and cover up that awful orange color. I'm back in my craft room to finally finish these cushions after being away the weekend at my cabin. Obviously, I didn't get it done because of that orange paint fiasco. So I'm going to start with this blue now. We're going to spritz them with the water and then paint on that blue fabric paint that I mixed up. It's likely going to take 2 or 3 coats with thoroughly drying in between each coat. It's critical to let the coat dry completely before applying the next one. If it's sunny, put them out in the sun, or if it's a warm spot to speed up the drying process, that would be perfect. We're ready for the second coat now. That first coat has completely dried. It's really covering well, but one more coat is needed. So here we go. 3 coats in total. The fabric is soft, it's pliable, and it's comfortable to sit on. Plus, there's no color transfer from this fabric paint. It works great, and it's a fantastic way to upcycle furniture without having to reupholster. Now that all 3 coats have dried completely, it's time to apply a top coat of wax. I'll include a link down below in the description of the wax I'm using. This is going to provide a nice finish and add a layer of protection. I'm also adding some darker wax around the corners to create more of an aged look, as if it's been worn over time. And as I move towards the middle, I won't be applying that black wax as heavy. And here are the finished cushions. I love the blue color, much better than that orange, and it matches well with the rug. I thought I could have mixed it a little bit more of a turquoise color for the perfect match, but it's fine. Now it's time to pull all those chair pads back together. The blue color blends beautifully with our log cabin, adding a little pop of color. This upcycling project was so easy on the wallet. I'm just using a tester of paint and some fabric softener, and I'm really happy with how these chair pads turned out. This video shows that even when things don't go as planned, sticking with it and fixing mistakes can turn a bad color choice into a perfect outcome. It reminds me that the road to success may not always be smooth, but the end result is worth it. I really recommend trying out this painting technique on fabric, as the results may pleasantly surprise you. There's always something incredibly satisfying about taking a stained and worn piece of furniture and transforming it into a beautiful functional item again.
You always hear me say, ask your friends, family, neighbors, if they have anything that they're donating. Tell them you're an upcycler, because you're going to be amazed at what probably you can pick up for free. This being the case. My girlfriend had this bench in her garage. She didn't have a spot for it and asked if I would like it. So I was given this bench for free. I'm going to upcycle it. It needs some paint. It's just raw pine, and it's going to be perfect at my doorway to keep hats and mitts and bits and pieces. Great storage bin. So we got lots of work. Let's get started. As you can see, raw pine, nothing's ever been done to it. All kinds of storage, has really great hardware on it. The hinges have the locking mechanism to stay up, and it's perfect at my front door. In one of my previous videos, I painted a cabinet for underneath my TV, and I also got that for free, which was a really great find too. I painted the base of it, and I left the doors and the top its original color. I want to try to tie this bench into that cabinet, so I'm probably going to paint the bottom black, the inside black, distress this top a little bit, and stain it to match that cabinet. First thing I'm going to do is take this top off. It's got 3 hinges and the mechanism at the end. Going to get out my screwdriver and get to work. How do I get myself into these predicaments? Almost every one of these screws are stripped and on a really hard angle to get at. So I'm being patient, and it might take a while. Hang tight. I'm going to get these hinges out. Wow. That was a lot of work. I got them out, not all of them. I had to kind of go front on one, back on the other, if that makes any sense. Anyways, the lid's off. I need a coffee break. Here's the issue I had with the hinges. Those 2 screws are stripped. They will not come out. There's a screw in that one that will not come out, and all 3 of those screws will not come out. I'm not going to fuss with them. I'm just going to paint around them, because it's just too hard to try to get those screws out. Okay, cup of coffee's made. Little tip, I'm sure you guys do it anyways, but just a reminder, keep all your screws, your hardware, your knobs, all in one spot for that specific project. Put it in a baggie, and maybe this has maybe happened to you or me. Make sure you zip the top or put a tie on it, or you can still lose them. Okay, drinking this coffee, and then I'm gonna get painting the inside of it. I've got a batch of homemade chalk paint mixed up. It's a really great recipe. I have a full tutorial on my channel if you want to learn how to make it. I'll put the link down below in the description. Really durable. I got a little roller and my Worcester paintbrush. This is called the Little Genius from Worcester. Fantastic paintbrush too. I'll put a link to that because it's one of my favorites. Inside's all painted. Now I'm gonna work on the outside. Okay, looks beautiful. I've got 2 coats of the black on. I'm going to let it dry, and then I'm gonna put a coat of polyacrylic sealer over that whole bench. Now we're gonna tackle the top of this bench. It's just a plain piece of pine. Hi, Tina. But it doesn't have any character. So I'm gonna take my hammer, we're gonna ding it, we're gonna notch it, we're gonna really bang it up, make it look like an old piece of barn board. So if you don't like watching this, turn away. Okay, so you can see how I've taken that brand new piece of pine and given it lots of little nicks, and I rounded the corners so it looks like it's an old piece of wood. And I'm just gonna go over with some sandpaper and just soften some of those little nicks and edges, and we'll be ready to stain. I have some water-based stain from another project that's pretty close to that cabinet that I'm trying to match it to. So we're just going to paint it on. I love it so far. I've got 2 coats of the stain on. I mixed up a little bit of that black chalk paint with some water and put it on a rag, and I'm going to just rub it on and then wipe it off quickly with another rag. And it's just giving it that old barn board look. So I'm gonna work away and see if I can achieve more of an aged wood look. I am really happy with the way this turned out. So the base and this top, I'm going to put a couple coats of polyacrylic sealer on both, put it back together, and wait until you see the transformation. And the bench is completely done. I absolutely love it. The hinges, of course, were a little bit tricky, but I got it to work, and a fantastic upcycle that was free. I hope you've enjoyed today's upcycle, and I've given you some inspiration to ask friends and family for things that they're gonna donate that you could probably upcycle and turn into something beautiful again. Thanks for watching. Have a great day, and we'll see you in the next video. And if you love this video, I'm sure you'll love either of these next 2.